We're delighted to have all of you join us this afternoon or this morning, whichever time zone you're in. This is our monthly webinar series. The topic today is performance evaluation in Agile. This is a really interesting topic and a sticky one at that. We've been wanting to do a webinar on this topic for some time now. As you guys know, the Agile philosophy is all around team, and yet most organizations are still haven't figured out a way to reconcile that with the individual performance review, which is a ritual end of the year in most of corporate America. So in this webinar, we'll discuss the disconnect that practices cause, which is a annual review in the classical HR practice, individual performance review, along how does that reconcile with the Agile thinking of team. And then we'll cover some concrete suggestions and practices that seem to work to reconcile the two. And I'm delighted to have Michael Hall as a presenter for today's session. Michael has been practicing these techniques in his work, so he'll be speaking right from a practitioner's viewpoint, which is always very valuable in these webinars. Michael is a founder of 3 Beacons and also a Agile training and coaching partner for Synerzip. He is a software practitioner from the early days following Agile practices from the days of year 2000 and beyond. He is a certified Scrum Master trained by the master Ken Schwaber, the inventor of Scrum, and he has not only transformed 3 large Agile teams, but also is a day-to-day practitioner of Agile practices even right now. So I'm delighted to have Michael cover this topic with us. By way of the process, this is a standard webinar we do every month. We will go through about 40-45 minutes of a prepared presentation, but we will welcome taking questions along the way. If there's a burning question that is pertinent to the slide and topic at hand, we'll pick it up right away and cover it. Otherwise, we'll hold all other questions to the end and leave another 10 minutes or 15 minutes at the end to cover Q&A. So you guys should keep adding your questions in your Q&A panel of GoToWebinar. With that, over to you, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Hemant. Welcome, folks, to today's webinar. The title is Performance Evaluation for Agile Team Members. As Hemant mentioned, it covers what I feel is a fairly controversial topic and something I've seen in various companies I've worked with in providing Agile training and consulting services. Well, we have a lot to cover, so let's jump into it. I would like to introduce this term called Chasm because I think it has direct relevance to today's topic. Chasms you see out in nature every now and then. You know, one example is a gorge or an abyss. But for the purposes of this discussion, I like the second definition, which is a sudden interruption of continuity or a gap. And also you'll see as we go through today, whenever I mention the word chasm, it can also mean a pronounced difference of opinion in interest or loyalty. So let me try to paint the picture of what I mean by the chasm here. In traditional projects, the emphasis is typically on individuals, individual contributor roles, and oftentimes heroics. You know, basically who performed the most heroics will get the highest ratings and the best evaluations. And understandably so, the performance evaluation in this mode is based on subject matter expertise, heroics, and basically sheer intellectual ability. In Agile projects, as Hemant mentioned, the emphasis is different. It's all about teamwork, collaboration, and skill generalization. But all too often, the performance evaluation approach is standard traditional. And when you couple this type of performance evaluation system to an Agile team, it it creates some dysfunctions and what I would call is a chasm. So, as the next slide shows, many companies are shifting to Agile or already have, but for whatever reason, they're keeping their existing traditional performance evaluation methods. And this is what causes the chasm. In a sense, your transition to Agile is not yet complete until you have revamped your performance evaluation approach to align with Agile principles. So right out of the gate, we're going to do a role play, Hemant and I are, and we're going to have a little fun with it. So I'm going to ask my seasoned colleague, Hemant Elhintz, to play the role of my Agile manager or director, and I will be the employee. And this is an example of using a traditional performance review for a member of the Agile team. So as we go through this, please listen and see if you can hear the chasm.
All right, Mike, welcome to your annual review today.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
Mike, let's start the review today. This is our annual review. We've been doing it for the last 2 years. The same pattern should work here. Let's start by having you share what you consider your major accomplishments for this last year.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I worked on 3 different teams that completed projects last year. Team Alpha, let me start with that one. We had great success as we not only met our sprint, all of our sprint deliverables, we were able to add in a few additional lower priority items that the customer was not even expecting. As you are probably aware, our team won the corporate award for best customer satisfaction. So we were really proud and pleased about that. And then the customer even treated our entire team to a night out at a Texas Rangers game. My second project team, Team Beta, we struggled a little bit at first, but then we recovered after the first 2 sprints to pick up some momentum and eventually hit the customer expectations, but there were a little bit of difficulty at the start. But after that, I believe the customer was happy with our performance. My third project team, Team Sigma, seemed to constantly overestimate what we could really do in a short 2-week sprint. So we kind of picked up a reputation of not being able to meet our commitments, and I definitely feel partially responsible for that due to my inexperience with the code base. However, on the good side, we did learn a lot more about the code base, and our team's estimates did get better as the project continued.
Great. I'm glad you shared these experiences, Mike, but what I heard that you share is not about what team did, but remember today's discussion is all about your performance review, so not the team's performance review.
Okay, but I mean, you know, everyone says Agile is all about the team, so I thought this would be about the team and kind of how I fit into the team.
Well, I mean, this is an individual performance review which will ultimately have to translate to a performance raise for you. So what we need to focus our discussion today is how did you contribute this past year?
Okay. Well, as part of these teams, I coded the configuration module for the Alpha project. I tested it. I fixed bugs that were reported by QA within the sprints, and I helped others whenever I could. For Beta and Sigma projects, I served as part of the QA team, developing automated test cases using wattage and our in-house regression tester. It saved us a lot of regression test time.
Okay. Well, I got a chance to talk to a few people who have worked with you in this last year, Mike, and the feedback is they think you are a good employee, but you're not as good as some of our key performers. So you have, what I'm reading from that feedback is there's room for you to grow. So what do you think is the room here to grow?
Well, I mean, my best guess would be that the key performers here honestly have 10 to 15 more years experience than I do, so I think that's probably the biggest difference between my performance and theirs.
So that could be. Yeah, you're right. There is a difference in the years of experience of yours and what we would consider heavy hitters in our team. But Mike, we need to get you to that heavy hitter level quickly, because in our team we need. Right now we have maybe about 10 or so what we would consider heavy hitters in software development. But we need much more than that, and we need to figure out how to get you to be there quickly. So how do you think we can do that?
I don't really know. I mean, it's going to take years of experience across these different code bases. I don't know. I guess I could work harder.
Well, there's always a possibility and an avenue, but how about have you thought about working smarter?
Well, yeah, I guess, but how do I do that realistically?
Well, in the spirit of Agile, Mike, that's something you got to take ownership for, which is figure out what you need in terms of individual training and coaching, and develop your expertise to be able to get to a level of higher proficiency.
Right. I guess I could use some training in software architecture, since most of our subject matter experts have architecture experience. Where can I get that training?
Well, again, Mike, that's something for you to figure out. What training you need and where to get it. I'll work on making sure we have the budget set aside for all that, but I don't have the answers around what training and where to get it. And that's something that you should ought to own.
Okay.
All right, Mike, with that, I guess that concludes our annual review. And here is, we worked out the numbers given what we had as a pool set aside for the raises. And here is your raise that for this year. And I know not what probably you were hoping or expecting. This is a little below average, but it is, I think, consistent with your performance. Do you have any questions before we wrap up?
No questions.
Okay. And in that case, let's wrap up today's discussion, and we'll reconvene again next year and have another performance review. So.
Okay. All right, folks. So thanks, Hemant. Hopefully the audience could see and feel the chasm and get a feel for how uncomfortable and at times painful that type of review can be. Now, before we get into specific performance evaluation techniques for the Agile team, let's spend a few minutes on understanding measurement. So it's human nature for us to modify our behavior to adhere to what is being measured. So if you want to achieve a certain behavior, the best way to do that is to define an important measurement for that. However, it is crucial to measure the right things. If you don't, you might have software engineers coding themselves a minivan in just a single afternoon. So measuring the wrong things can be quite disastrous at times. Now, when you have Agile teams using traditional performance evaluations, it can create organizational dysfunctions because the wrong thing is being measured. If the performance evaluation is all about individual performance, it can be quite anti-Agile, resulting in attitudes such as, me, myself, and I, promotion of myself, me first, team second, me versus everyone else, and it can even get worse. If everyone on the team knows that the performance evaluation at the end of the year is individualistic in nature, it can make the use of Agile methods seem fake or even artificial. Now, the best thing to measure is the team. The team is the unit that executes on the business objectives, and the team is the unit that's in the best position to identify performance gaps and cross-functional training as needed. A good analogy is a car dashboard. You do need a few basic measurements. For For example, you would not drive a car without a basic dashboard showing your current speed, your fuel level, coolant status, and things like that. So running an organization without some basic measurements is like driving a car without a dashboard. So now that we've established, at least at a high level, the need for measurement, and in particular the need for team-based measurement, let's dive into a handful of specific techniques that I have used with companies recently that do seem to work. Now, a good measurement must, in my mind, satisfy two criteria. Number one, it should be easy to collect. With very little effort, we can collect this metric. Number two, it should be valuable. And by that, I mean you can do something meaningful with it after you have collected it. So if a measurement does not satisfy both of those criteria, in my opinion, you should drop it and not use it. So here's the first tangible recommendation I have for you today in regards to doing team-based performance evaluations. It is called the end of sprint customer report card. As you can see, it is a simple Excel format. It starts with some header information identifying it as the sprint customer report card, and it names the project and it names the sprint number. And then the body of the report card has 5 attributes that the customer scores from 0 to 100 at the end of the sprint review. The first measurement is the value of delivery in terms of the prioritization, quantity, business need, etc. Second measurement is, do the committed features work as the customer expected them? Third is time frame commitment met. Fourth is, were changes along the way communicated effectively? And fifth is the UI intuitive, professional, and pleasing? Now, you can certainly change up these attributes. You may have only 3 attributes that you're measuring. You may have 10 or 7. I would say keep it single digits if you can, so that the customer doesn't feel like it's a difficulty to give a gut feel score on each of these. And yes, you can introduce your own attributes into this. And basically you get an overall customer satisfaction score at the end of each sprint by summing up these attributes and dividing by the number of attributes. There's also a section at the bottom that has some additional comments where the customer can write additional comments there. And then once the customer fills this in, share it with the entire team, take it into the retrospective for discussion points, and then as the project is done, you can compute the average for the team after all the sprints are done and the project is complete.
Mike, let's take one question which is directly on this particular topic itself. Okay. The question is, our Agile teams are measured for meeting their sprint commitment, which doesn't make sense because some believe they can undercommit just to meet their commitment.
Well, I think if you're having a problem with undercommitting just so that there's a great celebration at the end of the sprint, that's where the Scrum Master, a very strong Scrum Master, should step up, and even the product owner should say, you know, come on team, it's a little bit too easy to meet these commitments. We need to raise the bar and step it up and get greater quantity, and challenge the team each sprint to get more and more quantity until it starts to feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's always the gauge that I use, that, wow, it was really difficult working a 40 to 45-hour work week to meet the commitments this time. Therefore, we ought to stick with this velocity number moving ahead, or drop it down a little bit to get back into a more comfortable velocity. So my opinion is it should be self-policing, and the Scrum Master and product owner have to have the guts to step up and ask for that heightened quantity of story points in each sprint. So hopefully that answered the question. And if it didn't, then definitely ask a follow-up to that, because I know that there's a really good discussion around that. Well, here's an example of a Sprint customer report card that I've used and received recently in a project I was doing for Alvarado Independent School District, actually an iPhone application for them. You can see the customer rated us pretty good on value, time frame, and changes, but on committed features working as expected and UI intuitive, professional, and pleasing, they rated us you know, kind of in the C area there. So there's definitely some improvements there. If you look at the additional comments, they definitely play out the low scores in those two areas where we did experience the app crashing in the middle of the sprint review demo, and there were a number of comments from the floor about the user interface would look more intuitive and professional if we did this, that, and the other. Our number 2 tangible recommendation is to define a small set of sprint metrics. I've listed up a few examples here, but you know, a good one is the number of user story points delivered. Obviously, you need that for release planning and your sprint planning for the next sprint. So that one's kind of a given. But there may be a few others. For example, if you do, it may be a good idea to track the number of defects carried over to the next sprint. I personally have not been a fan of tracking number of defects found within a sprint, because you want that high level of collaboration between QA and developers. And yes, bugs will be found, defects will be found, but as long as they're fixed quickly within the sprint, it should be of very little concern. But if you do have defects coming out of the sprint, then you know, tracking that number may be considered valuable, depending on what you do with that number. Watch it over time and put in measures to drive that number down. Also, perhaps average test per story to help you get a feel for what your code coverage is and things like that. The bottom line is you should keep this set small and simple and keep it easy to collect and ensure that they are valuable. A couple of things not to measure within a sprint. I found these to be of very little use. For example, individual velocity, you know, looking at the task hours for a person and then comparing that to a 40-hour work week. I've found very little use for that. Even accuracy of task estimates. You might say, well, we need to track these so that we can get better over time, and I would agree with that, but just in practical use, I haven't found you know, a really valuable use of that, other than, you know, hey, let's talk about these in a more detailed fashion so that our estimates get a little better. Okay, a quick word about velocity. Team velocity is very important, as you know, for release planning and sprint planning. It's not very useful for performance evaluation because each team is different. It's made up of different people, and their baseline for story points is likely different across projects. Usually about this time when this topic comes up, someone asks about the ability to hide in an Agile team. Well, if the team's being measured and everything is team-based, you know, it could create an environment where low performers can hide and get away with it. My experience in this regard is that the reality is it's near impossible to hide and low on an Agile team due to the inherent built-in self-checks of daily synchronization and transparency. As a matter of fact, my experience shows that it's a lot easier to hide in the old traditional world than it is in an Agile world, because in an Agile world, you constantly have to basically self-justify what you did yesterday, what you're going to do today, and if you say the same thing over and over and over, it gets caught by either the Scrum Master or the team, and you have to come clean with that. My number 3 tangible recommendation is called the end of project customer report card. Looks similar to the end of sprint report card, but the attributes are different. Here at the end of the project, the customer would fill out one more report card and score the team on their ability to react to changes over the course of the entire project. Score us on the timeliness of the project, the quantity of features delivered, the quality of those features, and the level of collaboration experienced between the customer, the PO, and the development team. And then here, we would obviously encourage the customer to write additional comments, both positive and constructive. Oftentimes, the best gold nuggets are found in the comments. And here's an example customer report card for the end of the project. As you can see, pretty good scores all the way around, maybe a little bit of dissatisfaction on the expected quantity of the features. Okay, my number 4 tangible recommendation is called end of project product owner report card. Again, starts with some header information, and then this is the product owner evaluating the team. The product owner would fill in scores for these 5 attributes or whatever attributes you feel are valuable. In ours, we let the product owner grade us on our ability to deliver to the commitment throughout the entire project. The team's ability to react to changes, the team's overall technical abilities. And then the 4th one I really like is the team's mojo, our teamwork, our collaboration, our helpfulness, the spirit that was built up over the course of the project. And then finally, the team's ownership of the customer needs. Sometimes product owners feel like the team is not accepting the ownership of what the customer is saying and what their needs are, so they can score us low in that regard. Again, additional comments. It's also been brought up that you could also do a reverse one of these where the team rates the product owner, and that would be invaluable to get some consolidated team rating for each product owner for their individual performance review at the end of the year. So here's an example that the product owner filled out, giving the team some good feedback. And for this particular project, it looks like the product owner was pretty happy, but felt that there were some technical abilities and some ownership items that could have been better. And if you read that additional comment, it certainly plays out on both the high scores and the not so high scores. Number 5 tangible recommendation I have is at the end of a project, it's always a good idea to let each team member do a peer level review on everyone else. So a standard format with this for the peer review would be an Excel spreadsheet that lists each team member 1, team member 2, team member 3, etc., and these 5 attributes or whatever attributes you would like to measure. And then this file is sent to each team member, and what they do is they skip over the section where it has their name, but they fill in the sections where it has all of their other team member names. And let's see. Now note on these 5 attributes, note that only one of them deals with technical acumen. The other 4 deal with how well the person interacted within the team. So again, it stresses valuable attributes that should be measured within an Agile team. So And then everyone sends this back to the Agile manager or director, and then the director can, over time, average up all the scores for an individual across all of their projects at year end. We'll talk more about how that coalescing of data is done towards the end of the seminar today. Here is an example. Person X is doing quite well on this project and received very good scores on all 5 attributes. If you look at the bottom of this slide, though, person Y definitely has some improvement areas, in particular ability to deliver on commitment, their helpfulness to the rest of the team, and their collaboration skills. So if an Agile manager sees a score like this, and especially a consensus of scores like this from all or most of the team members where they are giving some peer review feedback such as this, then that would raise a red flag, and that Agile manager should immediately institute some performance improvement in these areas with this person so that their participation on the next project will benefit. Okay. Hemant alluded to the annual Agile Performance Review. This is actually my 6th and final tangible recommendation for evaluating performance within an Agile team. This performance review still must be done one-on-one due to privacy and HR policy rules. Generally, it's performed by an Agile manager or director, and their job is to gather and coalesce this data that I've recommended. And actually, with some Excel spreadsheet magic, it's pretty easy to gather that and coalesce it. So the Agile manager would compute for the person that they're about to have the review with an average team score for all the customer sprint report cards, and obviously across multiple projects. The Agile manager would also compute an average team score for all customer project report cards. They would also compute the average team score for all product owner project report cards, obviously across multiple projects, and then fourthly, compute an average score from the project peer reviews across all projects. And if the Agile manager will do that, then there is a number of data points and average scores that can be discussed with the individual one-on-one at year end. And obviously, I would highly recommend that the Agile manager walk around and query key coworkers, product owners, Scrum Masters for additional insights on the person that may not be coming through based on just sheer numbers. And then augment the performance evaluation information with that information and sit down and discuss with the individual what those numbers show and what other findings there might be there. A good thing for an Agile manager to do during these performance evaluation year-end annual reviews is to ask questions such as, what training do the teams need in order to become more effective? And then see what kind of consensus builds up as every person answers that question. Obviously, you want to give both positive and constructive feedback at this time. So now let's have one more round of fun. Same rules as last time. Hemant, as usual, is the boss and I am the employee. So this time, however, I am an Agile team member within an organization that utilizes team-based measurements and some of these recommendations for the performance evaluation. So listen and see if you can detect a chasm or not.
Welcome, Mike, to your annual performance review.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got a chance to sit down and go over this exercise. So I'd like to start this review by having you share what you consider your major accomplishments for
Okay, fair enough. I worked on 3 teams. All 3 teams were different. Team Alpha, great success. We met all of our sprint deliverables. We added in a few additional lower priority items. The customer wasn't even expecting those. The team won a corporate award for best customer satisfaction. I'm really proud of that. I have the plaque up on my wall. The customer even treated us to a night out at Texas Rangers game. Team Beta, my second team, we struggled a little bit at first, turned it around, recovered after the first 2 sprints. We picked up momentum. So eventually we started hitting their expectations. I think the customer was happy after the little bit of a rough start there, though. My third team, Team Sigma, kind of a different beast. We seemed to constantly overestimate what we could do in a short 2-week sprint, so we kind of picked up this reputation of not being able to hit our commitments. I feel partially responsible for that due to my inexperience with the code base. But on the good side, I did learn more about the code base, and we as a team learned more about the code base. So our estimates did start to get better as the project continued, but overall, definitely some room for improvement there.
Okay. I do remember the best customer award you guys got. That was excellent, and I remember the celebration you guys had around that. So that was incredible.
Good.
So what was different about that team and that you worked on compared to the others?
It's a little hard to put my finger on it other than we just really gelled. Everyone was extremely helpful, and when we got into a few predicaments, people would pitch in and help everyone get across the goal line. I think a lot of it had to do with the personalities that were within the team. Everyone seemed to understand that team was number one, and the power of the team really stood out there as much more than the sum of its parts.
So you mentioned among your other experiences in the last 12 months, the Sigma team experience where you had some challenge with the overestimation side.
Right.
So now that you have had some months to reflect upon that, what could you do differently?
Well, I think as soon as we missed the sprint 1 commitment, we should have all agreed to take on less for the next sprint. It was almost as if we were trying to make up for our poor performance on sprint 1 by taking on even more, and that was a tactical mistake that we made, and we should have paid closer attention to our team velocity in the early sprints.
So did you guys as a team discuss these points in the retrospectives?
Yeah, actually it did come up at the retrospectives, but in the end we did not come up with any specific and firm change to avoid repeating that same issue. You know what, that in retrospect, that was a big mistake. I should have spoken up and insisted we deal with it right then and there.
Well, that's good to take note of that fact going forward. So looking at the 3 projects that you were involved in the last year, so any main learnings that you can distill from those?
Well, I understand several code bases much better, and the beta project had some new business logic for coalescing and merging the analysis data. So I learned how to take an initial stab at that, share it amongst the team and the product owner, and gain consensus on how to move forward with the right design.
Good. Well, let's switch gears a bit and let's kind of review some of the quantitative data that we've been collecting with the scorecards that we use. So as it pertains to your involvement, your team's average, the end of sprint customer scorecard average is 87.3, so that's pretty good. Okay. And even better is your team's end of project scorecard from the customer, which is 92.5. So that's good. That is. Congratulations on that work. The other scorecard that we ought to review here is the product owners. They seem to really like working with your teams, and because the average project card score from them was 91.3.
Oh, good.
So that also
another low A. That's good.
Good review from those. The 4th scorecard we ought to review is the peer review perspective.
Right.
So your teammates give you very high marks on the technical powers and ability to deliver. But as you can see right here, they did give you average to low marks on collaboration skills. So what do you think you can do to improve that in order to be a better team next time?
Well, I think I need to speak up more and be willing to approach team members more often instead of trying to pound through the issues myself. I'm a little bit naturally on the shy side, so I think primarily it's just come out of my shell a little bit more.
Okay, well, that's good that you recognize what you need to do. That's very important. So that's excellent. Now, what cross-functional training do you need to position the teams and overall teams to be more cross-functional?
Well, we all definitely need more expertise on the database interface modules. So I'd like to take a little time and do a thorough code review and put some JUnit test cases in there to better understand it.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad you recognize that opportunity also. All right, Mike, so with that pretty much concludes our annual review. And here's a copy of the score that we collected for you to keep. Here is the performance raise for you that we arrived at. And as you see, this may not be a great raise, but comparatively it is pretty good. And take a look at it, see if you have any questions before we wrap up.
Sure. Well, thanks. I think it's an accurate assessment and a pretty good raise. I'm really proud to have been on these teams.
Excellent. Then, Mike, let's wrap this one up and let's continue our dialogue. Of course, we'll meet annually like we do for performance, but we'll also keep touching base on a more frequent basis to see how things are going and how we can continue to improve.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Let's do that. Okay, folks, that ends the role play 2. So hopefully you got a feel for the big difference between that versus the one where the chasm is more profound. So let's wrap up today. I know there's probably some questions I need to get to, but let's go over quickly just a couple of caveats and warnings here. As with any new approach, there will be some resistance. You know, we've always done it this way. The rest of the company does it this way, so engineering and PM needs to fall in line. So, and you know, that's, you will hit that resistance. You just have to try your best to convince them that there is a better way out there. So, in conclusion, here's the primary takeaways. I've listed 3 here. There may be a few others, but number 1, it is human nature for people. They will modify their behaviors to match the evaluation system. And anytime you roll out Agile or mature in Agile in your corporate enterprise, you do need to align the performance evaluation system with what Agile emphasizes. If you don't, it can and will cause dysfunction that erodes away at the team's effectiveness, because the behaviors will not be as purely Agile as they could be. And again, just a summary recap of the 6 tangible techniques that I presented today: the sprint customer report card, a few diagnostics at the end of the sprint, the project customer report card, the project product owner report card, the project peer review, and the annual Agile performance review. Some good references there: Fearless Change by the authors, Measuring and Managing Performance in Organizations by Robert D. Austin is probably the primary reference I used in this material. And then, of course, Jim Collins is excellent and popular book, Good to Great. So with that, I'm going to wrap up now, and if any of you out there, if any of your organizations have not yet transitioned to Agile performance evaluations, give me a call. I can work with your HR team and your organizational primes to effect a positive change there. Also, if you have Agile training needs in terms of Scrum, overall Agile methods, product owner role, user stories, distributed Agile, things like that, drop me an email to begin the discussion. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Hemant.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So folks in the audience, as usual, at this point, start thinking about the questions. We have a few questions already in our Q&A panel, but we'll take a few minutes for you guys to reflect upon the content we covered and let you come up with more questions. And then in the meantime, I will go over a couple of pages of introduction to Synerzip, and then we'll start taking questions in the remaining time. Okay. So with that, let's talk a bit about Synerzip. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a Agile software development services company. So we work as a product development partner for typically small to mid-sized technology companies and become their extension of their in-house engineering team. And by definition, all the work we do is the intellectual property of our clients, and we get involved in pretty much the entire software development lifecycle, from design, development, testing, so on. For all our clients, we are almost always put together a dedicated team of a high caliber software professionals, which seamlessly augments their in-house team. And these are very stable and high performance teams. But it's much more than staff augmentation. It is actually a lot more of entire project management following agile techniques. We also, because of our expertise in software development, particularly following agile techniques, we are actually able to really reduce the risk of software development. Many of our clients want to build something innovative in software, but may not have the deep expertise in building software. And we are able to hold their hand through the process and really help them guide them around the landmines that are always there in software development and reduce the risk of what they need to build. The next point about Synerzip is our cost argument. We have a dual shore software team with a development and QA team in India, product management, product owner team on the US side. But with a combined team, we are able to provide a significant cost advantage to our clients, close to 50% cost advantage. And the last point about Synerzip is our flexibility that we offer to our clients. We allow our clients, for those who do care about this flexibility, to convert the team that works with them, the Synerzip team, and convert it to their own captive team whenever they want. And this really works well for typically venture portfolio companies and they're in the expansion and the growth phase. That's Synerzip in a nutshell. The next page, as it refreshes on your screen, has a bunch of logos of a number of our clients, not all of them, but a representative sample. So you'll see we have most of our clients are small to mid-sized, typically venture-backed companies going through an expansion phase, and we become their development partner for them. And we have clients in Texas, Austin, Dallas, Houston, as well as in other parts of the country, including Bay Area, East Coast, Chicago area, and so on. So with that introduction to Synerzip out of the way, let's start taking questions come up here, Mike. So are you ready for the questions?
I'm ready.
Start picking questions that have come in the Q&A panel, and then we'll keep marching through that and see what ground we can cover. So one question is how frequently, we talked about annual performance review, but is there a reason, do you feel that this kind of review could be more often rather than just once a year at the end?
Yes, yes. It really depends on your corporate culture. You know, some corporations say there should be a performance review twice a year. Some say once a year. Some say every month. I think at some point, though, it becomes, you know, you can have it too often, and therefore it becomes too big of an overhead. So what I've seen is generally once per year, but probably the second most popular is twice per year, thinking that getting feedback into the cycle within 6 months, there's, you know, it's a pretty good balance between time expired and getting the feedback in. But the most important thing about an Agile team to remember is that feedback cycle is constant. It's not really only at the 6-month or annual review time, right? So, so yes, everything I've presented today can be done at any frequency of interval.
Okay. Let's take another question. I'm going to directly read it off the panel here, Q&A panel here. So if a member of a team is not doing well, for example, comes late, writes very buggy code, and doesn't use best practices and many other negative things, but the team is pulling his weight and making up for him, I guess, and therefore they still succeed as a team, how do you make sure that this laggard is not rewarded?
That's a pretty strong word, laggard, but I guess there are even more stronger words for a person like that. How do you make sure that team or that person is not rewarded for the team's success? Well, that's where a technique like this 360 peer review, which I presented, I believe it was number 4 or number 5 in the list. Every team members opinion about that laggard would be very low in terms of their technical acumen, their ability to own the problem, and then you know, at the end of the project, the Agile manager or HR person or whoever is reviewing that data would see that as an issue and would have to take corrective steps. Now, Agile obviously doesn't say anything about the corrective steps, but every company generally has a performance improvement plan or something like that. So that's one thing I will throw out there as a bit of advice. Implementing a few of these techniques will help you self-police that type of situation. The other thing I would offer is this. That person should, if they know they're a laggard, the team knows they're a laggard, so it should be a very uncomfortable situation for them within an Agile team. I've even heard of Agile teams voting someone off the island. And so I've seen it a few times where the team just basically says, we've made a team decision, this person is no longer part of our team. That's pretty brash, but if you have to, you have to. And then the final piece of advice I will give you is this. As a team, collectively, take that concern without the laggard, take that concern to your Scrum Master and product owner and insist on a change. Sometimes you can actually add to the team's performance by subtracting a laggard or a non-performer or a disruptive force. So as long as you put it in the right spirit, then you can insist that your Scrum Master and product owner do something. If you also have Agile managers or directors that oversee development, absolutely. As a team, go to that person and say, we have a concern, we have an issue, this is a consensus within our team. Will you help this person, the laggard, and will you help us as a team? And generally, if you do that in a positive spirit, changes can be effective.
That's excellent. Let me echo the same answer that we have seen in practice in our work, is that the team self-corrects and purges the laggard out themselves, so equivalent to your voting them off the island. So that's pretty commonly seen. If it is a well-functioning team, they will take an action and push this person out. So that's pretty important thing, is it should be well-functioning team. Okay, let's move on, take another question. We talked about this annual performance review and the raises that go with it. And I know it's a very common practice in most corporate America and probably around the world. Do you have any advice on how to allocate the pool of raises across performance? If you have a team of, let's say, 20 professionals and there is a budget for raises, how do you allocate based on performance?
Well, you know, that's where the Agile director or Agile manager has to make the tough decisions. I would advise them, if they have these techniques in place where they can get a feel for that person's performance within the context of a team, and they have all of these numbers, you know, 87.1% on the end of